Hello, YouTubers. All right. My name is Jason Hummel, and I am the author of The Copper Revolution, Healing with Minerals. This is my wife, Jennifer Hummel. She's
Hi.
wearing our t-shirt, The Copper Revolution, Healing with Minerals. And we also run a Facebook group. I spend most of my time there answering questions all day long and encouraging people on how to take copper and take it with co-minerals and how to deal with sometimes detox effects, sometimes co-nutrient deficiencies that result when you take high copper that speeds up your metabolism. Sometimes things happen when you detoxify. In our quick start guide, we have identified 12 different potential, somewhat rare problems that happen as people ramp up their copper. So it took me a year to write the book. We've been on high copper for 4 years. The book came out last year, so we now have 20,000 people in our Facebook group who have so many healing testimonials. It's absolutely fantastic. And what we want to talk about today is the topic of woo or woo-woo. And we're going to talk about vitamin A and copper interaction effects. And if we have enough time, maybe we'll talk a little bit about folate and why folate also is toxic like vitamin A is, because it's somewhat related.
We've actually been on copper for 5 years.
5 years now. It's right, because it's the spring. So
right.
It's, did I say 4?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for a long time it was 4, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.
Yeah, we're coming up on 5 years, yeah.
And when we say on copper, I mean roughly at high doses of copper, around 30 milligrams.
Right.
So
we started at 15 or so.
The grand total of copper we've taken over this time is roughly up to 60,000 milligrams. 20,000 milligrams is enough to almost kill some people sometime if they take it all at once. So we've taken the triple lethal dose. Ooh. And it hasn't built
over 5
years.
At
30 milligrams a day over 5 years. So we have plus topical at the 70. Otherwise, if you just include what we took orally, it's about 45,000 milligrams. But the point is, copper doesn't build up. It doesn't create toxic effects. It hasn't given us Alzheimer's. We can talk for about 2 hours on copper, and that's what we might do today. Hopefully we won't go that long. Okay, so that was the intro, 2 minutes. All right. So why don't you start us off, my lovely assistant and wife, Jennifer, and what is the definition of woo or woo-woo? What do we mean today, and what do we not mean?
Okay, so I looked up both.
Yes.
So woo, technically, is to woo someone or to show affection. So the technical term that we're going to talk about is woo-woo, but everyone shortens that to woo these days.
So when we're talking about woo, it doesn't necessarily mean affection. It also means, what does it mean?
It means woo-woo. So unconventional beliefs regarded as having little or no scientific basis, especially those relating to spirituality, mysticism, or alternative medicine.
What a great topic.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, relating to or holding unconventional beliefs.
So even saying that copper is not toxic is such a minority view in the present day. Both mainstream medicine and alternative medicine, generally speaking, most of the world regards copper as toxic. There are a few pockets here and there. We just learned about some Russians that were taking copper. Very exciting. And some South African doctors, even to this day, traditional, what are regarded as witch doctors, they use copper sulfate in their medicinal practices, which is interesting. That's in my book. Mm-hmm. But almost the whole world regards copper as toxic. And mostly it's from these super high doses, like at 20,000 milligrams that people might take, that might result in death about 15% of the time. And so but that actually shows how safe copper is, because nobody's taking it in those amounts. We're taking 30 milligrams to keep ourselves healthy and to improve our health in 200 ways. So before we get into our other subject, let's start with our woo. You're ready to start, huh?
I am.
Okay, so show us what this is.
This is woo, my most recent, most favorite.
Oh, favorite.
Piece of woo.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably will be the most famous too. But this is, it's called an amplifier.
Made from tensor rings.
And it has, the tensor rings around it, and then it has the little swirls in the middle, and it has a quartz crystal in the middle.
How much money did we waste on this?
Oh, it is totally not a waste, because it makes me so happy. I love to look at it. So
it's a great centerpiece, or even table piece, but it supposedly does all sorts of woo things. If you read the description of this at Etsy, it reads exactly like complete non-scientific nonsense. But they talk about how energy goes through the tensile rings and they can measure it and all this just,
Yeah.
like,
And so this
what does
one,
it really do? Who knows,
Yeah.
right?
So this one we got it because, it's copper, so people brought it to our attention. But come to find out, this is just copper plated.
Oh my gosh, we totally got scammed. It's who knows what it's made. It could be aluminum.
So I took it to work and I was like, oh, look at my gift. I got this for Christmas from Jason. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love it. This amplifier, it's copper. And one of the maintenance guys at work was like, I hate to tell you this, but that is not copper.
So where did you see it? Can you see it on there?
Looked
on the
it
edge
up
where
and
it's like copper
it's
plated?
actually copper plated, and it has a few
Can
little
you want to bring that close to the camera so they can see that it's copper plated, like a spot right in there?
Yeah, where the copper plating has worn off.
Right.
But anyway, overall, I love it. It's beautiful.
It's a nice decorative piece. It's
I like
cool.
to just hold it. It's pretty. I enjoy looking at it. I also enjoy crystals, so.
Is this the most woo-woo piece that we have?
Maybe.
Do you think? Maybe. Okay. So on the woo scale, 1 to 10, what would you rate this in terms of unscientific gobbledygook, perhaps total nonsense?
I don't know because I really
10 is
have
like
not.
One is most woo would be 10.
Yeah.
So 1 is like scientifically proven, interesting, does stuff.
Yeah.
10 is total woo. Where would you rate it?
I don't know because it just depends on who you talk to. Because there are people who have done.
They have testimonials.
Tensor rings.
They have testimonials.
Yeah.
Makes them feel good.
I know it makes me happy.
Are the testimonials fake? Who knows?
Yeah.
Woo.
Woo. I love this woo.
Okay. So let's put that one down and grab us another bit of woo.
Okay. So this was a piece of woo that Jason had before we even got together.
Yes.
And when we got together, we were comparing, we had a lot of the same books. We both had earthing sheets, which other people find a little interesting.
That's right.
We
were both taking copper.
Yeah, we were both taking copper. We were both doing a lot of the similar things. It was like our
both
paths.
Taking iodine.
Yeah, it was like our paths were super similar.
We were both taking boron.
And we were just living this parallel life until
we were
finally
both taking
found
MSM sulfur.
That's right, all the things.
I keep interrupting.
I know. And I had only heard about this, but Jason.
It actually has a name. It's called orgone.
Orgone.
Yes.
Yeah. So you talk about your orgone.
Okay. So if you look at this pyramid, it has a quartz crystal in the middle, surrounded by a copper coil around it, and then it's got lapis lazuli and maybe some copper flecks all poured into this resin pyramid that could theoretically, focus the energies upwards in it. Okay, paperweight. Okay, cool. Interesting. So, it
also has a swirl.
So this is an interesting bit of woo. So, also has the swirl.
The swirl on the front.
The swirl.
The copper swirl.
So this is an interesting bit of woo because, and I like to keep it around partly because it goes to show what we don't know. It kind of is humbling in that sense, but also not just for the paperweight and the coolness of it, but so there's this website, whale.to, and they published one of my articles on health. Okay, I'm not going to elaborate, but whale.to quickly got lambasted in the media, and one of the things they said is these guys are unscientific and they're into woo because they actually were selling these. Now, I didn't buy this from them. I think I bought it on Amazon or someplace, but it's interesting that just because they were selling this, hello, we are allowed to sell paperweights in this country. It's not a crime, that's not fraud or whatever. Even if whether this works for all their claims, who knows and who cares? That's not the point. The point is the mainstream media was trying to tarnish them for their views on woo because they were selling these things. I thought that was really interesting. Like that does not mean that the other things they talk about are not scientific. That's crazy talk. And that's what the mainstream media was making as their claims. So in relation to this is the concept of a Faraday cage, because a Faraday cage is made of copper, and Faraday was a guy who made these copper closets, and it was like multi-layered with wood and metal and wood, and people would go inside these closets that would block the EMF waves and they would feel better. So it was an alternative medicine practice. So woo means things like this, right, that have weird claims about them, but also means alternative medicine. And so
they made fun of the people, like the tinfoil hat wearing people.
Exactly. So they tried to call us tinfoil hat wearers because if we don't believe in anything, or if we are skeptical of mainstream claims, then we're tinfoil hat wearers. So why do people wear the tinfoil hats in theory, or the people who talk about them? They block EMFs. Some people are just going to flat out feel better with less EMF radiation. That's a known scientific thing because EMF sensitivity is a known thing, and some people are going to feel better with that.
Oh,
I mean, and also copper helps block EMFs, and it helps us become less sensitive to them. So we've had quite a few people on our forum who were EMF sensitive. Then they do supplementation with copper, and then they get better. And another mineral that helps with that also is boron. But I want to compare just this Faraday cage a little bit more. They blast people for believing in the concept of Faraday cages, but the mainstream media and the mainstream medical establishment uses a Faraday cage whenever you go in for an MRI. The MRI machines sit inside of an entire room lined with copper, floor, ceiling, all the way around, sealed door, so that their health machines work. So if they are using the technology of Faraday cages, but then sort of claim that they're in the concept of woo and unscientific and don't work, they're being totally hypocritical. So not only are their arguments like dumb, but they backfire on them and they expose themselves as being truly scared of the information rather than dealing with the information. They invent this slander of woo against people who believe in alternative medicine. So we're exposing that. And then not only that, but in their Faraday cages that they use gadolinium, which is a toxic metal, in their radio contrast dye, which people develop toxicity from, which copper should be able to detox. So they're also engaged in poisoning, which is totally horrific.
Right.
And hypocritical and again. So
while we're talking about EMFs,
yes,
protection from EMF, that leads us to our next piece of woo.
Okay.
So this
right.
I bought on Facebook. And I bought it because I think it's pretty.
Right.
I don't really wear jewelry. I don't wear earrings.
You had lost your prior necklace.
I had.
Yes.
Yes. It had kind of broken. I had one that had the tree on it.
Oh,
and
right.
It broke.
The tree of life. As the design.
And so, I wear our wedding ring, a couple of bracelets with gems, and now wear an Apple Watch, which I swore I would never do. But I really
you're now protected from the EMF. I'm not worried about cell phones next to my head because we take copper and it's protective.
Right. So. I really feel no effects to EMFs because we take copper and we have been for a good long while. So I wear an Apple Watch now. But anyway, so my other piece of woo that I found on Facebook is the Harmony pendant. I don't know if you can see that, but it has this design on it that has these circles, and then it has these 4 holes drilled through it. Anyway, so this is
rose gold.
Rose gold, which has copper and gold, and it is claimed to protect you from EMFs.
Right. It's actually 14 karat, so it's 14 out of 24 parts gold, and then the 10 parts out of 24 is copper.
Yeah, and I wear this every day. You're supposed to hold it 12 inches out from your body, once a week to charge it.
Clearly, the claims are excessive and borderline woo when they say that it protects you from EMF, because EMF includes things like radio waves, and radio waves are 5 to 5 feet. And if they're 5 feet, how is this tiny little thing going to protect you against an electromagnetic wave that's 5 feet? On the other hand, yes, copper does have an interaction with electromagnetism. And that brings us to our next piece, this one. So what we have here is a neodymium magnet, and we have a tiny little 10-ounce copper bar. And if you'll notice, it barely makes a clank. It'll clank if I drop it from here, but from here, it almost settles silently. It's very interesting. And then look at this. Resistance. Now that's cool, right? So this is the same property that's going on in electric motors. The resistance and the moving through magnets, and that resistance creates... It can either generate electricity or turn electricity into movement. So there we go. And then our next bit of woo is this. Okay. This is great.
So I shared
Wait, before I want to talk about why we're talking about woo more than one sense. And the sense is, not everything is knowable. We like to think that we're in a scientific world and that therefore things are knowable through science. Science has its limitations, and that's what this next piece talks about. And that's really important for our discussion on what comes later. So we're building to something here.
Yeah, so we shared this on a Facebook Live a while back, and this is my water bottle that has gems in the bottom. It has amethyst, clear quartz, and aquamarine.
And what's this pattern up at the top?
This,
the flower of life or the tree of life pattern?
It's the seed of
life.
Seed of life.
But it's a little different because it has to wrap around the bottom.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So actually, I think this one is the seed of life.
Okay.
So the seed of life is 7 circles that
Okay, now I have to admit here, I was extremely skeptical. I was like, oh my God, this is woo. You're way too much into woo. You're wasting money. And even your dad was like, do not waste money on this expensive water bottle.
Right. But
she bought it.
It's beautiful.
And I approved the purchase because I think, that's because what do I know? She likes it. If it makes her happy, that's important.
So I'm very much a minimalist.
Yeah.
I like to wear the same thing every day.
So what is
hang on.
Oh, yeah,
I literally own 3 pairs of shoes. So I'm like a very frugal person.
Right. She does not waste money on other stuff.
But sometimes I see things that are beautiful and that make me happy and that, I'm just drawn to.
Okay, let's get into the woo claims. What do they claim that this does?
Okay, so they claim that this structures the water. That the crystals inside.
And wait, what does that mean? Structures the water. Come on. Right.
Okay, so the structured water is the 4th phase of water. So we all know there's 3 phases of water: liquid, solid, and gas. There's actually a 4th phase of water.
Yeah, we know there's a 4th phase of matter called plasma. This doesn't turn the water into plasma. This sounds like woo. Okay, what else you got? Come on.
Structures the water to where it's more absorbable and it's more similar to your body's cells. Anyway, it's supposed to hydrate you better. Okay. So
it's supposed to hydrate you better just by being near the crystals?
Yes.
Okay, what's the actual scientific mechanism by which they make these woo claims, by the way the crystals actually change the water? What's the real deal?
I really have no idea, but I like it.
Okay. What about the piezoelectric properties of crystals?
Maybe.
Okay. All right.
They vibrate a little bit in there, and then it imparts that into the water. It communicates with the water. So there are other people, woo, that also say that you can write a word and tape it to your water bottle, and it will impart.
And speak to your water, and it will and it will make different crystals, and when you freeze the water, and then it shows that it's healthier water or unhealthy. Yeah.
Yes.
Whoa.
But they have measured it.
Okay.
Awesome. So, under a microscope.
So so the claims is that the water's going to be better and taste better and all the rest. So,
and this is the little pod.
So I looked it up.
Little crystal pod.
So I looked it up and I read counterculture claims exposing this as woo, and they said there's no detectable differences in the water and all the rest. And I'm like, yeah, well, clearly it's woo, right? They can't even test it. So, but then when she got the water bottle and she filled it with just normal bottled water, and then I drank it, I discovered that my taste buds are more sensitive than the instruments that claim that there's no change. This water changes. So I don't know how it does it. But something is happening here, and it should not be dismissed as nothing, because I can tell the difference when I taste it. So I was convinced it's not woo. I don't know what's going on, but it's not woo. And that was a little bit of a humiliating humbling admission that just because you think it's woo and crazy nonsense does not mean that it is. That's important to remember for later. Okay, what's next?
Alright, this is the next one.
Okay, this, you can see where I got the idea from. There's this little crystal in there that has the copper wrapped around it, and I just wanted to make one. So we got ourselves a crystal at a crystal shop, and I just grabbed some copper wire, and I just wrapped it around there, and there we go. I don't know what it does, but it's cool. And it's like a conversational piece or whatever, or I don't think I wrapped it around the top, but it's supposed to be like this. They call these things like a wand or an energy transmitter. It's just, I don't know what it does, but it's cool. So, humbling, whatever. All right.
I can't believe we're sharing all of our woo.
I know. Well, that wasn't even that expensive, and it's a cool little thing. We overpaid for the crystal. You can get crystals bigger than that for like $20. We paid like $80. But,
we didn't trade it. We traded for that.
But the cool is, yes, we did. But the thing we traded out was a piece of copper that cost about $70 or $80, and so we swapped it. Whatever. Okay, so that brings us to the. Now this is not woo. This is another copper doodad. I have my copper cup in a lot of my videos. It's a way to get copper, but not a whole lot of copper. 0.4 milligrams is what they say. And, we're taking 30, so what's 0.4? But it's a different form of copper because this is a metallic copper which might have slightly different properties than the copper sulfate that we normally take. Who knows? Is it woo? Is it not woo? I drink out of it. But here's the other thing. It almost just seems like not enough copper to have an effect, but you noticed the effect. You had your copper mug, because I had my copper mug, and what happened?
I didn't like it very much.
What happened? Why not?
I think that it got oxidized in the bottom or something.
Oh,
right?
it did.
Is
That's
that
right.
what you said?
And
Yeah.
you never cleaned it. That's the problem.
Well-
I clean mine once a week. You have to clean it once a week.
Yeah,
But yours got oxidized after you stopped using it.
After
So
I
it
stopped
wasn't really
using it.
oxidized when you were. But
Right.
the point is, it was doing something to you that you didn't like. What was that?
I don't remember. I just stopped
Heartburn?
using it. No, it just tasted
Metallic?
metallic to me,
Yeah,
and I did
that-
not like
that
the
happens.
taste of it.
Like
So-
everything, it takes a little bit of adjustment to get used to. When I
cup-
first bought my copper cup, I could only do it for about 3 or 4 days. I got heartburn. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm like, this is not right. Something's weird.
So my cup is beautiful.
But I've adjusted to it now.
And I still love to look at it. It has all these little intricate patterns and stuff in it, and it's really beautiful. But
But
I
you're not
much
using it
prefer the
regularly
glass.
now.
No,
But
I like to take
the
my
cup
copper
will last
forever.
and you could try to adjust it
Maybe
again.
try it again.
Sometimes adopting to new things takes a little bit of time, and that's normal too.
Right.
Okay, we are now going to the largest piece of woo and largest copper doodad in my collection, and this is totally cool. I'll show you a few with this. This is a 6-foot solid piece of copper. It's not a copper pipe. So let me show you something here. It's going to take a while to flow down to us, but this ring is flowing down the pipe. It's not a pipe, it's a solid piece of copper.
Yeah, the magnet.
There it is. So that's just totally cool, right? And so this large piece of copper also goes by the words, what is it? It's a staff, quarter staff, or a scepter. Interesting. I just think it's cool. Okay. That was a neat, fun little demonstration. And what next? Let's see. Next I wanted to show you this thing. People think this is woo, and this is absolutely not woo. This is our water distiller that we got for about $150, $170 off of Amazon. Huge debates, right? Is distilled water good for you? Is it not? And I want to show you something. I've used this and distilled about 3 or 4 gallons. Okay, and every time I distill about 3 or 4 gallons, I have to clean the inside. This, look at how dirty it is on the inside. Do you see that scum? And do you see where it's cleared out to the bottom? That's where the scum has peeled off and it's revealing the steel underneath. That scum is a thick scum of fluoride left behind. All right? If you had any filter that was that big, if it were able to filter fluoride, after 4 gallons, it would be completely clogged. Nothing would flow through that because that is a solid piece of scum. So filters don't work. That's the proof that filters couldn't possibly work. Okay? When people are selling you filters and then they claim it removes fluoride, that's the woo. The distilled water is not woo. That works. Okay? They're lying to you, and that's the proof. There's no possible way they could filter fluoride. And if they did, they're only going to filter a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, like probably 5%. They claim it filters up to 30% of the fluoride sometimes, but that would get clogged just as bad as that after 12 gallons. Multiply by another 4, right? So people who are buying these entire home water filtration systems for $5,000, they just bought $5,000 worth of woo. I hate to break it to you, but liars exist, and they're taking advantage of people, and that's the proof. Look at the bottom of your distiller. What is that? That's fluoride, and fluoride is a toxic poison. There are 180 studies now showing that fluoride is a neurotoxin. In other words, it makes you dumber. And what happens when you're dumber? You fall for scams like a $5,000 whole house filter that claims to remove fluoride, but there's no possible way it would, because you've never seen what comes out of a real distiller. So you have to get a distiller if you're going to be taking copper. Why? Because copper removes fluoride. And so what we also see when people try to take copper on our program, if they take 2 milligrams of copper, they go nowhere. Why? Because the average person is consuming 3 to 4 milligrams of fluoride every day. Probably 2.5 milligrams of fluoride is just in the water consumption that they do, and the rest is in our food supply. If you drink just one Coca-Cola, you might be getting, I found it on the internet, there's a link, I even shared it with the Coca-Cola company and they didn't respond. One Coca-Cola has about 5 milligrams of fluoride. It's 10 times the amount that's found in tap water. It's crazy. No, the worst one was Coke.
Oh.
Coke was like 6 milligrams. Pepsi was like 4 milligrams. Your Dr. Peppers that you drink are down to like 1 milligram. So you're still getting like 1.5 milligrams. No wonder why we're taking 30 milligrams of copper. It's to detox the fluoride that's everywhere.
Every day.
No, not every day. But it's a good reason to drink lemonade or something if we can. But, you know, we're not perfect. We want to live in the real world, right? You know, I mean, you can't live as a monk. I eat hamburgers out at restaurants that are probably cooked on Teflon surfaces, and Teflon is fluoride. There's a lot of unknown exposures of fluoride. We get fluoride in our chicken, because chicken feed is high in fluoride because it's used as an antifungal, an antibiotic. Dried fruit is contaminated with fluoride because they put that on as an antifungal so that the fruits don't rot. And it's not listed as an ingredient. You had to teach me, and I had to learn this the hard way, that a lot of dried fruit that's sold as organic, fluoride is organic because it's just a mineral. So even though it's a toxin, it falls under the umbrella of organic. And I looked that up, and sure enough, it's organic. But yeah, so you can't trust what's organic out there anymore either. I hate to break it to you, but organic is more woo than anything we've showed you, because it's full of lies and fraud and false claims. That's really what woo is, isn't it? Right?
Not necessarily.
Not there's real woo that actually works and does cool stuff, like I showed you too. But still, now you see why it's tying in, right? So now with all the woo past, I mean, even saying that copper is healthy, people classify as woo because it's alternative health, and it's a very minority viewpoint. So now I'm going to get into the next minority viewpoint, which is that vitamin A is toxic. I've been writing an article on it, but so far these days, I refer people to Grant Genero's website. He has 2 free ebooks on the subject. They're very good books, and they were very convincing. And I want to summarize some of the top arguments on what convinced me that vitamin A is toxic. Number one, there are approximately 150 well-known, admitted by the establishment, toxic effects of excess vitamin A. These range from osteoporosis to rashes on the skins, destruction of epithelial tissues throughout the body, even blindness, which they claim is vitamin A deficiency, and I'll get to that in a minute. What are all these toxic effects? I read the list of 150 of them, like thyroid problems. Why? Because the thyroid has its own epithelial tissues. All sorts of autoimmune conditions, brain swelling, because the brain has its own inner lining to its skin too. Adrenal fatigue, because the adrenal skin can get, the skin of the adrenal glands can get destroyed from vitamin A toxicity. So these are all known things. So then you look up, okay, well, what does the establishment admit about how much vitamin A is toxic? And you know what they say? Complete mystery, totally unknown. Wait a second here. This is a total red flag. If they know it's toxic and they know it's bad for us, why wouldn't they have put some research, time, and energy into discovering what the toxic levels are so that they could tell us? Because they're being a little nefarious, that's why. They obviously would have put some time and effort to discover what the toxic level... I mean, hello, it's 2023. This should have been discovered 30 years ago now, right? I mean, come on. It's because they are being purposefully deceptive. They're the woo, okay? By even claiming it's a vitamin. I'll prove that up here in a second. There are 2 huge claims that showed to me that there's no viable vitamin activity for vitamin A, and that it's only a metabolite that has toxic effects. The only good about it is that it does have toxic effects, and the body actually can use it to kill germs, which is interesting. But So there are actually quite a few proofs that it's toxic, but all the destruction should be a big clue. And the fact that they don't and they can't admit at what level the destruction causes. But here's the two biggest for vitamin A, and it's that in the original vitamin A studies, they could test vitamin A in the food diets, and they said that here's a diet that has no vitamin A in it, and they're right. There's no vitamin A, but it was loaded with retinol, and the way it works is beta carotenes get converted to vitamin A, which then can get converted to retinol or OL or retinal AL. They're all toxic because they all get converted one to the other. Now, some people will say, no, some people don't convert or convert slowly the beta carotenes to vitamin A, and so therefore that form is not poisonous. And some people will say, well, some people can't convert them very easily. But the reality is copper actually helps the conversion. So when you're taking copper, we have to be maybe a little bit more careful. The point is, these original vitamin A deficiency diets weren't deficient in vitamin A. They were loaded with retinol in it. Why? Because they gave them lard. Lard is a animal fat from pigs, right? And so the lard was cooked. And in the cooking process, they destroyed the vitamin A, but it all got converted to retinol, and they couldn't detect that it had retinol. So all of the vitamin A deficiency symptoms are really vitamin A toxicity symptoms in the original vitamin A deficient diets because they were loaded with retinol. So anything you think you know about what vitamin A deficiency is, it's just vitamin A toxicity. And if you look into it further, they say and admit that vitamin A deficiency mimics vitamin A toxicity. They're basically admitting that what I just told you was true, that all vitamin A deficiency is not deficiency, it's toxicity. What a mind blower. So the other big proof, okay, this was done in the 1920s, okay? And the other big proof is that, the world went through a world war. It's called World War II, right after, in the 1945 era. And there were prisoners of war on both sides. And on both sides, prisoners were given roughly a cup of rice a day as food. Rice is one of the lowest vitamin A foods. And according to the vitamin A deficiency diets that weren't deficiency diets, those studies were all fraudulent. And they didn't even know they were fraudulent at the time, but we know now. And all these prisoners of war who got rice with no vitamin A in it didn't develop any vitamin A deficiency diseases. They got skinny, they got sick, but it wasn't vitamin A deficiency that did them in. They had clear eyesight. And according to the vitamin A deficiency diets, all their vitamin A deficiencies should have set in within a matter of 6 weeks, and none of it did. It was really all just vitamin A toxicity in those early studies. So there's not even any proof that vitamin A deficiency causes anything because we have huge human studies of people who were given vitamin A deficiency diets and no vitamin A deficiency diseases ever showed up. So it's only a toxin, it's not a nutrient. I can't believe I discovered this, but prior to having discovered this, my views on vitamin A were that it's one of the few that's toxic. You can't take it in high doses, so maybe it's something that we should be a little cautious about. So I almost never really took it. I never really wanted to add it to my vitamin and mineral supplementation regimen.
But whenever we got together...
Yes, now it's time for you to jump in and tell us about your experiences.
I had taken it in the past, so...
That's right. And you convinced me to take it.
I
experimented, and I was like, okay, what? And when I took it, I never really got any good results.
Right.
And so I remained skeptical.
Right. So when I was about 36, I was diagnosed with a large uterine fibroid about the size of a baseball. And I went to my doctor that I'd gone to for years, and he was like, oh, I know how to fix that. You take 100,000 IU of vitamin A daily for 3 months, and then you cut back to 25,000 IU a day vitamin A as a maintenance dose.
And this is for a uterine fibroid, which is considered a precancerous tumor thing. And what did I tell you about vitamin A? It destroys all sorts of tissues. Well, what do they try to do with cancer? They try to destroy cancer. That's what they're...
Kill cancer.
They want to try and kill it. So they're using excess vitamin A for its tissue-destroying properties to try to kill cancer. That's the theory, and it still doesn't work.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so I did that. And
in fact, they do that to this day. Vitamin A, excess vitamin A and retinols are used as a chemotherapy, and it still doesn't work.
Yeah, so shortly after that, I changed doctors, and I went to a different functional medicine doctor that's pretty famous now out of Lubbock, Texas. And and I was talking to his nurse practitioner, telling her everything that I was on, and that, you know, this is what this other doctor had put me on. She went and asked the doctor, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's a pretty smart guy. Go ahead and take that. There's no harm in that."
Yeah.
And so I did,
Right.
and I did that for years, not knowing.
And she's very smart. She said, "Let's take vitamin A together." I said, "Okay, well, we're not going to take excessive amounts. We're only going to do 25,000.
I think we did 10,000.
I thought we did 25,000.
I don't know, something like that.
But we didn't do it for more than about a month.
No.
I couldn't tell that it was doing anything positive.
Right.
I'm like, if I can't tell that it's doing something positive, why take it? That was my reasoning.
Right.
So, you know, it's pretty protective,
right?
To just say, hey, this is clearly not helping.
Yeah. So whenever I'm detoxing stuff, I'm kind of coming from a different, you know, everyone has their own toxin exposure.
Right.
So whenever you start a program that's detoxifying a lot of things, you might go through cycles of detox, or it might take longer than others. You know, I was on Prozac for 7 years, which is a fluoride-based drug that I did not realize at the time. God, I was young and stupid.
Right.
But anyway, so, you know,
so we've learned the hard way on some of these things.
Fluoride, I'm detoxing vitamin A, and I still am to this day. So anyhow, keep going.
There's also a tremendous amount of disclaimers on the retinol when it's used as an anti-acne medicine. I think it's not called retinol, it's called something else. Do you remember what that one's called? But anyway, some of the disclaimers are huge, but it also is something known to cause birth defects, which is one of the most toxic toxins. There's only like 23 big things that are known to cause birth defects, and excess vitamin A and excess retinol is one of them. So it's really bad stuff. You should not be adding it to your regimen. Now here, I want to get to some of the science on vitamin A and what Grant Genero believes and what I learned from him when I tried to talk to him in emails. And this is good. So the other thing is that so all of these symptoms of vitamin A toxicity, they are like mirror images of the same as copper deficiency, okay? And copper seems to fix all of the problems of vitamin A toxicity. So it's very interesting that it has such a widely diverse set of point-counterpoint, ranging from also diabetes, destruction of blood cells, and osteoporosis, which you wouldn't think. But here's how it works for osteoporosis. We even know. It's converted to retinol, which is also called retinoic acid. So if the body wants to neutralize an acid, what does it need to do? It needs to grab a base. Well, what's calcium? Calcium is an alkaloid base. So the body will cannibalize its own bone tissue to try to neutralize the poison of retinoic acid. Wow. Some other things that Grant Genero taught me was that in his books are that so it's in plants, obviously. Sweet potatoes are really hot. So we cut out sweet potatoes.
Right, because I love sweet potatoes. Like, we were eating them a lot.
So the toxin in poison ivy looks almost identical to a retinol. The other thing, you know, we've heard, and I went over this briefly, that beta carotenes get converted to vitamin A. Convert is a very weird word. It sounds like it's like making an upgrade, like the body is taking a building block and then building something else. It's the exact opposite. It's a downgrade. It's a breaking apart. So a beta carotene is something like, looks like this. My two hands are like, they're like two retinol or vitamin A molecules. All it has to do is break it apart. In other words, it has to be degraded to become the vitamin A or retinol toxins when the ultimate conversion happens. So one of the ways the body detoxifies this stuff is with they call it a retinol carrying protein or retinol binding protein. The retinol binding protein looks kind of like a cannon-shaped molecule, like this, and then it traps the retinol inside of it. And there's another name for the retinol binding protein, and it is that it's also called a I'm losing my word. It's called the it's the I just lost it. It's shoot.
I don't know.
We talked about it earlier.
Retinol binding protein
it's antibody.
Oh,
That's
antibody.
It. Antibody, yes. So
okay, yeah.
And antibodies are used to carry toxins out of the body, so that's almost further proof that vitamin A is a toxin. The other is that vitamin A and copper move inversely together in the liver. This is shown in the science. So as vitamin A goes down, copper goes up. As copper goes up, vitamin A goes down. Because they have this inverse relationship, that to me says that it's proof that it's a toxin, because copper is an antitoxin for everything. Toxins deplete copper. This is shown time and time again. And copper depletes toxins. And there's just a few vitamins and minerals that also have this kind of an interaction. It doesn't prove that vitamins or minerals are toxins, but it's a good indication that vitamin A is only a toxin. With a lot of the others, there's more of a synergistic effect. Like, for example, zinc and copper are slightly antagonistic, but only at really high levels. But there's also a stronger synergy when you take them at reasonable amounts to each other, because copper and zinc are both needed to do a lot of things together, like make collagen and to make detoxifying enzymes like metallothionein and superoxide dismutase. And copper and vitamin C work well together to make collagen and to kill germs and to detoxify the body. So there's always synergies in these other things that will move inversely to copper. But again, those are only at very high levels. But in the liver, vitamin A and copper, it's like as one goes up, the other goes down. So that proves that copper is detoxifying vitamin A. And it also helps to convert, again, the beta carotene up to vitamin A. So here's our theory. Here's the way the vitamin A toxicity works. It's not a problem as long as the liver is not over full with vitamin A, because the body will store this toxin in the liver. If the liver gets to be overflow, it begins to store the vitamin A in the fat. As the fat storage then fills up, it has nowhere else to go but to come out in the skin. And when it comes out in the skin tissues on your skin, on your outside skin, and on the skin of your internal organs, that's when it causes destruction, because there's no place else for it to go. So it comes out fast. And when it starts coming out fast, this acid destroys your skin like an acid would and leaves bleeding, weeping, rashes that don't heal. It's awful. So the foods that do that are like tomatoes. People say that they have like a tomato allergy, or tomatoes can even lead to arthritis. Well, we now know why, because they are basically this vitamin A heavy food, or they're heavy in beta carotene like substances that then get converted to vitamin A, and that's how tomatoes cause joint pain, because it has to leach calcium out of the bones for the body to deal with it, and it leads to all sorts of rashes, all sorts of autoimmune problems. And where was I going with my train of thought here? I just lost it. So it's we have to avoid tomatoes in our diets to deal with this. I'm talking theory now, and then we have to go back to what do? We're avoiding sweet potatoes. We have to avoid too much ketchup. We have to avoid salsa. Can't have ketchup loaded on the burgers. And just recently you had an issue. What is your issue, and what were you doing?
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah. So 1 week, I don't know why, I was just craving all kinds of things that have vitamin A. Just, right. Just all the things.
You just wanted it.
I just wanted it.
That's right.
We'd been going low vitamin A for
That's
a
right.
while.
And we were thinking, hey, maybe it's not so much of a problem.
Yeah, we've detoxed it enough and whatnot. So at the end of that week, I had the heart racing episode. Is that what you're talking about?
And your rash on your neck.
And I got a rash on my neck.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
And we traced it that you had just eaten too many high vitamin A foods. Even milk is fortified with vitamin A these days, a little bit, and maybe too much. And so people aren't really having milk allergies; they're having vitamin A allergies.
Right.
That's what I think is happening.
Right. Yeah.
I got my point back. Yes, here's the point. So the theory is, according to Grant Genero, that when the liver and the fat fill up with vitamin A, it spills out into the skin in excessive amounts, and that's what causes things we can actually see in terms of destruction. Because, again, vitamin A is trapped in the fat, and it's in the fat of the animal, so again, if you're eating the big fat, it's there. But the point is, now we're getting to what Grant doesn't know about vitamin A. He believes copper's toxic, like most of the world believes copper's toxic. That's par for the course. I can't fault him for that. That's the default view. So I try to encourage him to look at how copper is this wonderful nutrient that helps detoxify vitamin A and could be useful for him. And he said, no, I really don't have time to study that right now. I'm studying glyphosate for probably the next year. So, that didn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. That happens. People get busy. They have their own lives to do. And, you just can't expect everything from everybody else. You gotta do the work yourself if you're interested. So, his theory, again, is that the liver, when it overflows with vitamin A, it's a problem. I found research that if you take more copper and the copper fills up the liver and it then lowers the vitamin A, it's clearly detoxing vitamin A. But if the liver is filled with copper instead of vitamin A, there's no more vitamin A storage either. So our bodies detoxify vitamin A faster, this is my theory, on our copper protocol than what they otherwise would. So one of the things we were noticing, we were getting little before I really put the vitamin A detox into practice, we were getting little itty bitty dot-like red rashes everywhere, like a little dot here, little dot there, and I couldn't figure out what it was. All of it went away on our very first 3 days of a very strict no vitamin A diet. In other words, we healed a hell of a lot faster, but we were probably always on the edge of it being a problem, but yet copper was also continually detoxing it from our bodies. So we also have discovered we have the same sensitivity and fast detoxing ability with fluoride exposure. So if we goof up and eat chicken that's fed high fluoride chicken feed, almost every single time I will get one bit of acne somewhere, and I'm 52. I shouldn't be getting acne.
It's grapes.
But we believe that
grapes
fluoride. We believe that acne is fluoride. There's a whole book, Acne is Fluoride, Melissa Galco. That's very interesting. So the point is, we're detoxing vitamin A very quickly with copper, but we don't have a ton of storage. So we thought that maybe, now that we've eliminated it for a while, we can have it again and play around. And it turns out we really can't.
And I love salsa, and that's
we're like,
the thing
we're fast
too.
detoxing,
Right.
but the fast detoxing means it's going to come out fast in the skin too, because we
Right.
don't have a lot of storage for it because our livers are filled with copper.
Right.
Another point with regards to vitamin A, the vitamin A as a toxin, the body actually can use vitamin A to kill germs, but the body also uses copper to kill germs, and I believe it has a preferential desire to use copper when it's available to kill germs, and when the body has access to copper, it doesn't need the vitamin A and will use the copper to get rid of the vitamin A, and that's another theory I have. And I'm talking this in terms of theory because, how much research is there saying vitamin A is toxic? It's very, very little. It's coming mostly from Grant Genero. And how much research is there overlap between how copper and vitamin A work in with the view that copper is good? Very, very little. So what I'm saying is borderline woo. I don't necessarily know for sure what I'm saying is correct. That's why I wanted to start with woo. It seems like what I'm saying is correct, but we don't know for sure. There is, again, the study that shows that it moves inversely. I do know that the body can use vitamin A and copper at the same time to kill germs. That's like the one good use the body has with it. And so what, of course, they also say all these autoimmune disease, the body's attacking itself. It's not the body attacking itself. It's the toxin, vitamin A, in our diets, in our copper deficiency, in most people who are copper deficiency, that makes those autoimmune diseases happen. That's Grant's theory. I think it's a pretty good theory, except I think he overly views vitamin A as the sole toxin for everybody, and obviously that's not the case. There are tons of toxins. We all have like 300 and everybody has a slightly different toxic profile, and so everybody's symptoms are going to be slightly different. This is why we have 20,000 different diseases. Oh, well, you have a slightly different symptom profile. Well, if you just get rid of all the toxins, okay, and you just load up on all the nutrients, and not the nutrients that are claimed to be, or not the toxins that are claimed to be nutrients, and not the nutrients that are actually toxins, you're going to heal. So it's very important to understand which one is good for you and which one is not. Just because they claim that it's a vitamin doesn't mean that it is a vitamin. It's just a label. Just like retinol binding protein is a label, it's really more like an antibody. And so words are important, and just because something is claimed to be doesn't mean that it actually is. Another lesson from Woo. Not all claims are valid. You have to test them. You have to run them through your filter. Do they make sense? And apply common sense to the issue. And so I think we have time. We haven't even gone a full hour. Perfect. We can get into folate. Folate is a big one. So here's the deal with folate. I believe folate is only a metabolite and only a toxin, just like vitamin A. Has no use whatsoever. Okay? It's a bold claim to say that because folate is vitamin B9. But if vitamin A is not truly a vitamin, well, maybe other vitamins are not truly vitamins either. I mean, how reliable are these studies? So even the government admits that, and it admits through 5 other studies, and there's more than 5. There's probably at least 13 to 15 other studies that I've quoted in my folate article that I haven't released yet. I might release it as a book. But the point is, there's plenty of studies showing that folate is toxic above 1 milligram. Some people claim that folate is toxic above, not 1 milligram, sorry. 1 did I say 1 milligram? I have to use micrograms. 1,000 micrograms, which is 1 milligram. Some people say that it's toxic above 300 micrograms, which is a very small amount. There's no reason for us to be taking any folate because the average American is getting now 500 micrograms of folate in our diets because all flour is supplemented with folate. All meat has folate. All green leaves have folate. The word folate comes from foliage, or
pretty much all B-complex vitamins have.
Yeah, you have to avoid B complex. So it's very easy to get above that 1,000 mark because we're already getting 500. So, and the thing that happens at this toxic level is neurotoxic effects. So it's basically brain damage. The vast majority of people who are claiming that folate has any use at all are those people saying that it's good for people with brain damage. How are you going to detect brain damage in people who are already brain damaged? First of all, that's the huge red flag. And are people healing left and right from brain damage? Have we healed brain damage in society with this overuse of folate in the brain damaged population? And the answer is unequivocally not. These things are not healable. We don't have a ton of healing testimonials. So it's got to fit into the woo category. It's false. It's fraudulent. Shouldn't be used. It runs counter to the studies. Doesn't make sense. The government has admitted that high levels of folate have been tested over and over again for various diseases, and it never cures anything. So, and the other smell test. There's not a single group on Facebook of people who are claiming that high folate does anything. No, there's no healing testimonials from it. So it's probably just a toxin. And then if you look at the total amounts we're talking about, 1 milligram, that is a really small, tiny amount. And you're telling me it's toxic at 1 milligram? That shit is toxic. Mm-hmm. That's just the end conclusion it has to be. And the only people who are trying to claim that it is, well, it's good, are people who, A, usually have brain damage, B, act like they have brain damage because their arguments are crap, or they say, well, it calms me down. Okay, well, toxins do have a calming effect. You know, go drink alcohol or take heroin and you will calm your ass down. That does not mean that it's not a toxin. That is more proof that it is a toxin. So that is a really poorly convincing argument that it calms you down. Yeah, that's what toxins do. Yeah, you should stop taking it. You know, unless you're able to, you know, do high equations and use your brain fantastically and get good grades and fix your brain damage, then no, it's not good for you. Stop. You took toxin for 7 years in the form of Prozac because why? Calms you down. That's what toxins do. It's, you know, it's not rocket science. Figure it out. It's proof that it's toxin. So, yeah, people make really, really bad arguments, especially when they're trying to argue in favor of toxins. Look at the arguments alcoholics make. It's silly. And I know because I took alcohol and I was an alcoholic. Yeah, toxins are bad. So,
all the way around.
It's all the way around, right? I mean, so to this one guy who was arguing that folate is useful, I said, well, you know, you got to prove all those studies are bad, and that's like you're fighting uphill with the sun in your eyes. Good luck. Most people don't know that folate is toxic, but it's admitted by the government that it is. Through other studies that are not conducted by the government, we should pay attention to that.
Yeah, the first time that I heard that folate and folic acid were toxic was actually in a Prevention magazine article.
Yeah.
Which Prevention is kind of like a mainstream, you know, health magazine. And this was, probably 15 years ago.
That's right.
And that article just really stood out to me because it said that studies showed that folate and folic acid actually cause cancer. And I thought that was fascinating.
Right. Clearly toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just because views are not big and mainstream does not mean they're not correct. Another big lesson. And just because the government is putting forth a view does not mean it's incorrect. It's important to read the fine print on your vitamins and minerals. A lot of people are led to take 800 micrograms of folate, that plus the background amount. And plus, if you also eat a lot of greens, people are going to get well over the amount that causes brain damage. We have a society that seems to be getting dumber and dumber all the time. Be careful of accidentally taking brain damaging substances is really the lesson. People are like, well, Jason, if you argue with the government about the RDA and copper, why aren't you arguing with them over folate? Because they're keeping good copper away from us, and they're pushing toxins on us. They push toxic vitamin A, they push toxic vitamin D, they push toxic folate, they push toxic fluoride, and they restrict the antidote to all these things, the copper. They restrict the antidote to all these things, iodine. These are the ones that are slandered. So they want to have it. I'm not trying to have it both ways. They started the lies. I am refuting the lies whichever way they go. You can't just always agree with the government and always disagree with the government. That's not how it works, So that's, again, the kind of an argument that you would expect from somebody who's brain damaged and taking too much folate.
Right.
You got to get into the details, because details matter and amounts matter. And I think that's bringing me to the conclusion.
That's right. And as far as woo-woo goes, some of it is, super benign. Like this. Like, I love this. This is so cool.
It's cool.
And maybe it is woo. Maybe it does have these magnifying properties. I have no idea.
Yeah, it claims that magnifies your intentions.
It
amplifies your desires,
Yes.
Those
So
are cool
fun.
things, right?
Sometimes I carry it to work with me, sort of like my pet rock,
At the most, it's not harmful.
Right.
There's a lot of harmful woo that I expose, like people who are using reverse osmosis. Those are just confusing words. The reality of what reverse osmosis is a filter under pressure. It's just filtered water, okay? They're not going to sell as much if they just say what it is. It's water running through a filter. They're going to use confusing words like reverse osmosis. When they're using confusing words, that's how you know it's woo.
Right.
That's harmful woo.
Right.
This is not harmful woo. That's also the difference.
Right.
Are we doing any harmful woo, baby, that we know of?
Not that I know.
Okay, do we have any delusions that we have that are still rattling around in our brain that we need to think about? And that's a hard question. If you're deceived, do you really know it? Not until you do some study that shows the counterpoint. I think we've done that pretty good. We busted through a lot of delusions, a lot of popular delusions today, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good. You feeling good?
Yeah.
Great.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.